Hello and welcome to ANF Plus. We are at Assembly Atlanta for the DeKalb County CEO Forum, hosted by Atlanta News First and our media partners at Decaturish. My name is Maria Moreau, and isn't this backdrop just stunning? We are in the heart of DeKalb County at Georgia's newest state-of-the-art production film studio, owned by our parent company, Gray Television. Originally the location of former General Motors assembly plant, Assembly Atlanta and Assembly Studios honors Georgia's past, present, and future. Sitting on 135 acres, its superior infrastructure, 19 immersive sound stages, and world-class innovation makes it the premier destination for film greatness. But Assembly is more than just TV and movie production. Take a closer look and you'll find a dream to showcase Metro Atlanta and the state while providing jobs, especially for Georgians. Assembly Atlanta is a new heartbeat, bringing opportunities and life back to Doraville. Today we are going to be talking with the three candidates running to become the next CEO of the great DeKalb County and talking about the topics that matter to you, the citizen. We have with us Larry Johnson, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, and Steve Bradshaw. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer our questions with the option to use a rebuttal twice throughout the forum. The candidates will get a 2-minute opening statement and closing remark. We are going to be discussing a wide range of topics, but before we begin, let's get to know our moderators and candidates.
All right, thank you, Maria. Beautiful day here at Assembly Studios for what we hope will certainly be an informative day for all of us. I want to really quickly introduce my co-moderators for this forum. To my right, Dan Whisenhunt, who is the editor and publisher of Decaturish, knows his stuff around here, certainly. And to my left is Rashidah Hasan. She is with the League of Women Voters of Georgia. So certainly we are excited to hear what these candidates have to say, and hopefully we hope you learned something from this as well too. Of course, we're going to get going now with these opening statements. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to introduce themselves to you, talk a little bit about their experience, maybe a little bit about some of their platforms, and then we're going to get right into these questions. And so let's meet the folks that we have joining us here today. You probably know some of them, some familiar faces up here with us. Ms. Cochran-Johnson, we're going to start with you. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. I am Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. I formerly served as the Super District 7 Commissioner in DeKalb County, Georgia. I came on the Board of Commissioners in 2019, and I come from corporate America. As your commissioner, I have worked very hard on economic development, public safety, quality of life, and raising the bar in government service as well as communications. I also sit before you as your 2023 Public Official of the Year by the American Public Works Association and your 2023 Housing Champion by Georgia Act. I have worked on issues that are very tough. I look forward to helping move DeKalb County progressively forward. As a commissioner, it has been my goal to see us thrive and grow. I feel that DeKalb County is at a crossroad. Because I come from corporate America, I have placed a great deal of emphasis on fiscal responsibility. So I'm proud to say to our DeKalb County citizens that I have saved, as the chair of Public Works and Infrastructure, over $92 million by only requiring mandatory audit of contracts over $3 million. And I have also allocated more than $1.2 billion, representing the highest appropriation by a sitting commissioner in the history of DeKalb County. I look forward to being your next CEO and continuing the track record that I have already established.
Very well, thank you for that. Mr. Bradshaw.
Yes, hello, my name is Steve Bradshaw. I've made the decision to seek the office of DeKalb County CEO. A little bit about me. I started my professional life as a United States Army officer, was formerly trained as a tank commander, and fought in the First Persian Gulf War in 1991. After that, relocated here to Metro Atlanta with my wife and went corporate. I spent 17, 18 years in corporate America, managing multi-million-dollar operations and as a business development executive selling to C-suite individuals. Along the way, I picked up a graduate degree in public administration and then was invited back to Georgia State University to teach in the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State. And I've been on the County Commission now for 7 years, 2 of those years serving as presiding officer of the board. And I can tell you why I'm running, why I'm seeking this seat. I'm running, number one, because I love DeKalb County. My wife and I made a conscious decision to come here 30 years ago. Our flag is planted, and we want to see DeKalb County continue to prosper. And the second reason is I'm doing this in response to everyone who's asked me to do it. People in South DeKalb, people in Central DeKalb, people in North DeKalb, who've watched the way I've discharged the duties of my office over the last 7 years and said to themselves, we need more of that at the next level. So that is why I'm running. I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation, and thank you so much for affording us this opportunity to be here.
Excellent, and thank you for being here, certainly. And finally, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. I'm Larry Johnson, LJ for short. I've been serving DeKalb County for 20 years. My background is public health, and I've been known as the Health and Wellness Commissioner since I've been on board. I've been a champion for sidewalks, infrastructure improvements, and making sure that DeKalb County is well all over the county. My platform is very specific as we move forward. I like to focus on public safety. You don't have public safety, and people don't feel like they're at peace to walk, to go to grocery stores. We don't have a good and safe county. I'll also focus on these potholes. I'm tired of us running and bumping and trying to get through different places in our community. The other one is prevention. My public health background, and it's what we dealt with the pandemic. Mental health has now become so pronounced in our society. What do? No, we don't put them in the jailhouse. We need to find care and have to care for those folks in our community. And last but not least, on how do we make certain that the connected be connected and serve the underserved. And so I chaired the Planning, Economic, and Community Service Committee. And that was the committee that dealt with a lot of the precious issues that the pandemic had shown, from food insecurity, housing evictions, making sure that those things are secure and making a difference. And so I will emphasize those P's and making sure that we can connect the dots, because we have to get ready. The CEO that comes next has to get ready for the 22nd century. And so I'm Generation X. My job is to connect the boomers, the Ys, and the Zs around the gig economy and the green economy.
Excellent. All right, well, now that the folks know you a little bit, let's get into the meat of this. This is why we're here. We have some questions for you. You will each have 2 minutes to answer them. You will each also get 2 rebuttals of 1 minute each, so you let me know when you want them. We will note also that some of these questions come directly from folks who live in DeKalb County. So not only will you get to talk about some of the people that you could very potentially represent as CEO, but you will also get to speak to them in answering their questions. So I'm going to have your first one. We're going to keep the same order just for ease sake, and then we'll alternate who gets to go first. So again, Ms. Cochran-Johnson, we're going to start with you. I have your first question. It is on policing. DeKalb County has seemed to struggle with policing staffing levels in recent years. So the question is, why do you think it has been such an issue to tackle for the county, and what do you plan to do about it in your potential role as CEO?
Absolutely. Policing has been an issue, and public safety is on the forefront of everyone's mind because, of course, it affects everything from economic development to your property values. As it relates to currently our police staffing, according to the FBI, and that is the standard we use, there should be 2.4 officers per 1,000 people. Currently, in DeKalb County, we have 1 per 1,000. I will say that unfortunately what we're experiencing isn't different from other major jurisdictions, but in terms of the solution. In speaking with our officers and reviewing our previous policies, over a decade ago, we had a policy that allowed all of our officers after 10 years of service to vest at 82.5% of their existing salary. By the account of all officers, it was considered the most attractive retirement and pension plan in the state of Georgia. During that time, we had far less issues with the recruitment of police and personnel. So I really believe that incentives are going to be very important, as well as existing salary. We raised 2 years ago our police officer salary to $55,000, and that was after a regional study was conducted. However, I believe that we need to keep it local. We are not competing regionally, but within the metro area. Currently, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, and Brookhaven have the highest paid officers in the state, and that is approximately $70,000. It's time we raise the salary of officers and focus on factors beyond just incentives, but also the workplace environment.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Mr. Bradshaw, We're talking about police staffing levels in DeKalb County.
Yeah, so I've spent several intense conversations with our police chief talking about this issue. I've talked to the precinct commanders. I've talked to a lot of the line police officers. And what it distills to is compensation and benefits. So as the next CEO, I'm going to have to do something pretty dramatic on the compensation and benefits front in order to stop the hemorrhaging of our police officers and get our numbers back up to where they need to be. Right now, where we're sitting, the precincts are understaffed, and it's everything that they can do just to answer calls. And because that's basically all they're engaged in, they're not able to do the other things that we would want from our police force to make it more compatible with our various communities, community policing and police athletic league, and all the things that we would want to do to make the relationship between the citizens and the people who police us a good one. But compensation and benefits are at the top of the agenda, and I'll move dramatically to make that happen.
Excellent. We appreciate that answer. And finally, 2 minutes to you, Mr.
Yes,
Johnson.
sir. I think part of it is, as you talk about compensation and benefits, you also got to talk about the intangibles. How do we have a program for cops to have houses, to pay for them their down payment assistance programs? How do we work with our police department? Because public safety, to me, is more than just hiring enough officers. It's about prevention. What do we do on the other side to help alleviate some of the pressures that the cops have to face? Where's our prevention programs for our young people? How are we paying our community service aides? Because some of these cases, we may have to have a community service aide. And that's a person who can go out there and handle like a burglary or just car break-ins, traffic issues. Use those things to help alleviate and make the job, the environment, a more comfortable environment. And also, we got to learn how to stop just competing with the cities. We got to go outside of the state and make sure that our recruitment and our retention programs and the advertisement that we do are par excellence to other places and say, okay, this is a great place to live. We got some of the best educational systems. We have some of the best eateries around. This is a place where you can grow and go with your family in our community. How do you use those type of intangibles to really make a difference? And then you got to continue to pay and have those incentives and those benefits. And you couple that with all of those, what I would call quality of life issues to make a difference in our community. So we can focus on pay and compensation, but you got to make sure you do those intangibles that can make the difference on whether they come or stay.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. We know it's an important topic here in DeKalb County, so we appreciate it. We felt it was important to start with that question, in fact.
Absolutely.
All right, moving right along. Mr. Bradshaw,
Yes.
you will answer this next question first,
Okay.
coming from Rashidah.
All right. Okay, so if DeKalb County is found to be a sanctuary government under HB 301, assuming that it passes this legislative session and state funds are withheld from the county, how would you handle it?
So that's immigration's a very, very taxing issue, and primarily immigration and managing immigration is the purview of the federal government. So the way I would attack that is to make sure I maintain good relationships with all of the members of our General Assembly, make sure I'm maintaining a good relationship with the governor, and make sure that whatever we're doing in relationship to coordinating with the federal government is synchronized. But immigration is a federal issue, and that's I would defer to my colleagues in the federal government to handle that.
Yes, I would just add, it also impacts our sheriff department because I think the power, the jails is under our sheriff. That's the separate constitutional officer. And we have to work closely with our sheriff and also our state governor, because if the law is the law, we got to make sure we do it humanely to make sure that folks who are undocumented be treated in the most humane, the best way they can. But we have to make sure people go through the legal system to become part of to become a citizen, but we also got to make sure we follow the laws in this country and in this state. And so I will work closely with our Mexican consulate and other consulates who have undocumented folks who may be coming in to see how we make sure that we're following the law and making sure that we don't lose the resources that we need to maintain the laws in our community, but also making sure that immigration and the things that at the state level and the federal level are followed so we can thrive as a county but also making sure that we can move forward to make sure that the undocumented folks are moving in the way that they need to move, but making sure that the state laws are being upheld.
I would say that understanding that the bulk of our funding in this category would come from the federal level. Of course, then it comes down to state and eventually reaches the local level. We can't just sit back and wait on federal. What you've explained here is what I call an unfunded Band-Aid. And unfortunately, in government, each and every day, we're faced with doing increasingly more with less. So I would say that it's going to require what I call a conglomerate approach. We must not only focus on our state legislators and others on the federal level, our local senators to assist us with securing and the procurement of funds, but I think that it's also going to be important that we set aside funds. Coming from corporate America, I have a lot of innovative ideas to help generate revenue to help us address such issues. But also, when we talk about these issues, I can also say that as it relates currently to our immigrant and refugee communities, that I've already worked very closely with the IRC, of which I have proudly given over $500,000 in discretionary funding to assist with the issue you currently describe. Because those organizations, although they're on the front line of integrating into our communities and providing refuge for our immigrants, they do not have the resources that are needed. Also, the Latin American Association I've worked very closely with to provide programming. So it is going to take a conglomerate approach, and I do believe that outreach, the engagement of wraparound and safety net organizations will be important as we wait and hope that federal funding comes. We must still continue to be proactive.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Rashidah, for that question, and thank you all for your answers. We're going to turn it over to Dan now for your next question. 2 minutes.
So you might have seen these incidents in the news. There's been several pedestrian deaths in DeKalb County over the last year. Propel ATL, which is a pedestrian advocacy organization, found that there were 38 pedestrian deaths in 2022, and that was a 23% increase over the previous year. Starting with Commissioner Larry Johnson, as CEO, what will you do to improve pedestrian safety in DeKalb County?
That's a very good issue, because when I first moved to DeKalb in 1993, my first issue, I got my first job around public health at the Board of Health, and my first job was pedestrian safety. And so we worked with folks on Candler Road because they had the highest pedestrian injury rate for African American males in the state of Georgia. And we worked in Atlanta and DeKalb because they had the highest pedestrian injury rate for folks in elementary school. And so when I became a commissioner, I was the tie-breaking vote to bring sidewalks to areas that did not have sidewalks. I talked with MARTA to stop putting their bus stops in the middle of the block and put them at the corner where people need to go. And so in 1995, I marched down to the state capitol and created the first law that gave pedestrians the right of way in crosswalks. So when you see that little sign in the middle of the crosswalk, that was the first law ever got created in the state of Georgia, which gave pedestrians the right of way. And we created the Pedestrian Safety Week, which is the third week in October. So as a CEO, my job is to continue to make sure folks respect pedestrians. We're going to put sidewalks where they need to go. We put our bike ramps in where they need to go. But we also got to focus on the environmental modifications and education and enforcement. You have to engage in those 3 E's from a public health perspective to make sure folks are educated, from the driver to the walker, and also make sure we have environmental modifications in place that we don't put pedestrians in injury way to make sure that they're at risk of getting hit. And so I would focus on basically my sidewalks, focus on environmental modifications to make sure pedestrians are safe in our community, and making sure they have the right to walk in areas that may not even have sidewalks. But I would put a special emphasis on that education piece and enforcement so we can respect our pedestrians.
Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, same question to you.
Absolutely. Sitting here, I was reflecting because I know that this issue has come before the Board of Commissioners on several occasions. I will say to you that across DeKalb County, we are expanding our crosswalks as well as our sidewalks, because for many years, certain portions of DeKalb, even with high traffic, did not have sidewalks. I'll say overall, it has been a budgetary issue, because of course now, after 2017, once we passed SPLOST, it gave us additional monies, and we have focused primarily as a first start on our high traffic areas. So areas have received sidewalks that have had highest incidence of traffic. Also our schools, because we want to create more walkable communities, and also all of our state and local government buildings have all received sidewalks. But it just doesn't seem to be enough. I think that what we must immediately begin doing, and I have called for in incidents where we've had certain pedestrian issues, is traffic studies of those areas. Many of our communities, we have been very responsive and not proactive to creating traffic studies within the community. So I think that it's very important to begin a top-down approach where we would take a look at the locations where we've had incidents, determine whether or not we have proper speeds in place to calm traffic, and then determine what measures are necessary in order to ensure that we have safe crossings in DeKalb as to prevent injuries for our citizens.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradshaw, same question.
Yeah, so we should induce and drive for more walkability in new developments, especially developments around transit-oriented development. Anything that's coming online new should have a walkability component as a part of that zoning and development process. Second thing is it distills to funding. In SPLOST 1, I believe there was about $15 million set aside for sidewalks. Not nearly enough. SPLOST 2 is greater than that. I think the number is $25 million. Still not enough, but it's moving in the right direction. So I would, as CEO, I would augment those SPLOST funds with general funds to create more walkability and more sidewalks throughout DeKalb County.
And I'd just like to say in response, not per se as a rebuttal, but that the numbers that were just quoted, they take, of course, a conglomerate approach. Out of that $10 and $15 million, we're not only getting sidewalks, but other enhancements. So again, the amount of revenue that we deal with to address the issue is skewed if we would consider the entire amount that was just referenced.
And also, just to add, when you have that amount of money, you also can leverage it with federal and state funds, that you can then go out and get more funds to double what you have. So as a CEO, my job is to champion how do we leverage those resources that we have locally and go to the federal government and state government to make sure that we can do more with. And it saves the taxpayer money in DeKalb, but also builds more safety. And that's what you're talking about, Dan, and that's what I'm going to be about.
And I would also like to say that I'm not convinced the issue is as much money as it is doing the necessary studies to determine what traffic calming may be needed, particularly in areas that we know have had high incidents of motor vehicle incidents for pedestrians.
We appreciate you guys with your answers on that. We're going to get one more question in before we have to break here, and heads up, we're going to have more infrastructure questions later, so hold those thoughts. We have another question on first response, this one about 911 wait times. What are your plans, and we'll start with you, Ms. Cochran-Johnson, to address long wait times in DeKalb County when folks pick up the phone and call 911 in an emergency?
Yes, I would like to say that, I've received multiple calls as recent as last month. Even though I'm a newly retired commissioner, expressing concerns for wait time. Currently within DeKalb County, we work from a matrix, and depending upon the nature of the particular incident, it determines the time for response. So we have various levels. Level 1, of course, requires a 3 to 5 minute on-site, but I do believe that it's going to be very important for us to carefully evaluate the current service provider. Currently in DeKalb County, when you fail to meet the response time, there is a fine that is levied against the service provider. I don't want the fines, I want the service. So if it requires us to expand the existing contract, I'm more than prepared to do that, to ensure that we are delivering service. The last thing that anyone should want, whether you're an elected official or you are a member of the general public, is to be in a situation where you are in need of critical service and there is no response. Also, I believe that it's very imperative as it relates to the 311 callers within DeKalb County to increase pay. When we look across the state at the service that's being provided and the costs that are associated with it, we could certainly do better. So I do propose also across DeKalb County, as it relates to our general employees, a ongoing COLA, a cost of living allowance for them, because we have not adjusted salaries in most of our departments in line with state and some federal levels.
All right, thank you for that. We're talking 911 response calls, Mr. Bradshaw.
Yep, staffing levels in that function are way too low. And it is a byproduct of compensation, benefits, and training. So I would make a heavy investment in all of those so that the folks that are interfacing with people in an emergency situation are well-trained, professional, well-compensated, and want to be there to help people work through their issues.
Thank you for that. Mr. Johnson.
And I will add to that, I think the other part is education. You got people that call 911 and ask, what time is it? Do I set my clock back? What's the weather? Things of that nature is non-emergency calls, and that clogs up the 911 system. So we do have some of the most competent folks in our 911 system, but when you have to handle a lot of non-emergency calls, so first thing I would do, besides compensation, is education to our public. And we have to stay on top of that because we need to make sure we drive some of those calls to our 311 system or our non-emergency number. That would drive down those calls at least by 25%. And guess what? That frees up those 911 officers to deal with the emergencies and the critical things that have to be dealt with in DeKalb County. And so it's about education, it's about compensation, but it's also about training the residents as well as our 911 operators on how do we move forward.
All right, well, we appreciate
And not a rebuttal, but I like numbers.
At some point, I'm going to have to start docking.
As I like numbers, so I want to say to people that are watching, we receive over 60,000 non-emergency calls per month to our emergency line. So I agree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Larry Johnson, and I do believe that public education.
Yes.
We have DCTV, but we have never, in my opinion, programmed it properly, coming from news and media with vignettes and information that would help steer public reception and responses. So I do believe that that is very important to educate.
All right, well, we've got something to talk about then in the break, which we're going to take right now. When we come back, of course, we're going to have a question about Lifeline Animal Shelter. Like I said, we've got more infrastructure questions, and we've got one on assembly right here where we are today. We're going to take a break.
$350,000 for a water bill? I'll show you how a renter in Atlanta got hit in the face with a massive water bill and what you can do to make sure your water bill never gets this high. Search ANF on your smart TV and get more news on Atlanta News First.
Getting the news you need just got easier with Atlanta News First Plus. Breaking news and live updates every half hour so you can catch up quick. First alert weather with the largest team of meteorologists keeping you safe. Investigations that put you and your family first. And Atlanta entertainment like you've never seen before. It's more news, more weather, and more stories, all in one place. Watch it now free wherever you stream. Just search Atlanta News First.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We have covered some really good ground so far. Just to go over the housekeeping rules one more time, each candidate is going to get 2 minutes to answer these questions before we close things out. No time soon, but before we close things out with a two-minute closing statement. So we left off on Rashidah, and this will be an easy one because this is a question about you all.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll start with you, Mr. Bradshaw.
Sure.
And this actually is a question that came from a reader.
Okay.
And so each candidate here has previously served or is serving as a county commissioner. What do you consider to be your greatest achievement as an elected official?
So thank you for the question. I feel like my 7 years in office have been full of achievements, but if I have to distill it, number one, I'm proud of the fact that DeKalb County's fiscal house is in order. The budget when I came in 2017 was a wreck, and through sound policies and fiscal management, we're in good shape. Specific to my district, I'm extraordinarily proud of the $9.5 million community and senior center we built in my district. There was a gaping need when I took office, and we We managed through that process, through some ups and downs and twists and turns, but the bottom line is we got it done, and it's equipped with a swimming pool, which did cost me a little bit more than money and political capital, but it was worth it because I was doing that for the citizens who put me in office and not the people among my fellow commissioners who were resisting me. I'm also very proud of the food pantry at Wade Walker YMCA that I fund that feeds over 250 families every other week. I'm really, really proud of that. I'm also proud of the Rise Up Young Men's Development Program that I fully fund. It's a derivative of President Obama's My Brother's Keepers program, and it's targeted at young boys of color to provide them with mentorship and leadership over the summer. We do it in partnership with Morehouse College. This past summer, we had 53 boys in the program and another 50 on the wait list. So that's something I'm going to tremendously enhance when I become CEO.
Awesome. Okay.
Mine would be, my theme has always been linking, leveraging, and empowering with results you can see. And some of the things that come to mind is I have a lady who's over 80 years old named Miss Bugs, and she's always wanted sidewalks on McAfee. And it took me 12 years, and then we had to piece the funding together, you know, our infrastructure work. She finally got those sidewalks, and I visited her last week, but unfortunately she has early Alzheimer's, and she can't walk that street with me. So having sidewalks, infrastructure, and connecting residents to understand how their government works to make things happen. We've done over $100 million with the Splosh funds to District 3. That means sidewalks, paved streets, as well as trails. The other part would be my under 21 band. This is a band that we created with How Big Is Your Dream? Group of folks in the community, teens, and they got nominated for a Grammy this year. And it's amazing. Then one of the young people is now going to be on The Voice and have a chance to do that. And so bringing that intergenerational spirit to the table, as a CEO, you will see that type of collaboration and partnerships continue. The other part was I represented 300 million Americans, over 3,000 counties. I was the president of the National Association of Counties, and I brought $65 billion direct funds called American Rescue Plan to counties directly. Didn't go to the state, we went directly to help with evictions, food insecurity, COVID testing, shots, to make sure people stayed well during this pandemic.
Thank you.
I would say my biggest accomplishments start with the money. The allocation successfully as the chair of Public Works and Infrastructure of $1.4 billion. That set a new record, and it was without incident and without scandal. So very excited and happy to have been a part of some of the most critical years of moving forward infrastructure projects. I would say second would be fiscal accountability. Through just the use of a service that we have, mandatory audit, saving $92 million in contracts, some as simple as mathematical errors. My third accomplishment that I'm very proud of is bringing hope to DeKalb. In 2016, we cut ribbon on Operation Hope. He was willing to take a chance on my notion that existing purely within financial institutions weren't enough. And since that time, we have been able to allocate $24 million in down payment assistance and first-time home loans, generating almost 90 homeowners in DeKalb County who would not have been. Legislation, I'm your dollar store lady. My legislation that I passed locally in DeKalb County to stop the proliferation of dollar stores within underserved communities has been carried over in 9 states and received recognition on both major networks, CBS Sunday Morning, as well as Good Day Atlanta and New York Times. So very excited to have made a mark that has a global perspective.
I really need to see this opportunity to rebut. My colleague has made reference to the audits. In doing the audits as chair of Public Works, I was the one who led that reform when I was chair of Public Works before she was. And the actual savings is $132 million. So I just wanted to correct the record on that.
And let me say that Commissioner Bradshaw is absolutely correct. $132 million total. Of that, during his year as the chair of Public Works, it was only $30 million that is a direct result of his savings. And I'd also ask, why have you not continued the practice? Because since leaving Public Works and Infrastructure, you have not sent forth to audit any of your other chair appropriations, including the budget.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Every other standing committee of the commission has adopted that reform, and candidly, aside from the budget, the contracts that come through finance, audit, and budget are smaller than $3 million normally. But every committee has adopted that reform, and that reform came in July 9th of 2019, about halfway through that year. And it was a negotiation between myself and former commissioners Kathy Gannon and Nancy Jester. So that reform originated with us.
Well, we appreciate you guys debating that. That's what we're here for, of course. And thank you, Rashidah, for that question. We're going to move on to Dan now on a question that if you probably asked 100 different commissioners or CEOs, you'd probably get 100 different answers. But it's an important one. It's on housing.
Absolutely. And this question comes from the community, but it could have easily come from anybody who's ever enjoyed having a roof over their head and trying to find one in Atlanta. And it's about affordable housing. Starting with you, Commissioner Larry Johnson, if you're elected, what will you do to promote the development of affordable housing in DeKalb County?
I think you have to start off with looking at your policies. I championed the workforce housing policy that just passed last year. This will help our firefighters, teachers, folks who we need to have in our community stay and incentivize our developers to make sure that we build up density-wise. The other part is we need to start a capital fund, that we have grant money that we can put towards a fund to help developers who want to build more affordable and workforce housing in our community. And so my goal is to link and leverage those public-private partnerships. Of course, my experience working with NACO at the national level, we get a lot of funding from HUD. It's unfortunate that our HUD Secretary Fudge is leaving, but I will still work closely with the Biden administration and also with the governor to make sure that we have those funds, because the county can't do it alone. This is a public-private partnership that we have to do. So as a CEO, my job will be to champion wherever I can to find additional funding to make that happen, and then also provide seed money in our budget to incentivize and also work with Decide DeKalb, which also does our housing and affordable housing in our community. So it would be a collaboration and partnership to work with other agencies. The last thing we did, we worked with Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership. It was a $20 million investment to work with folks that started who wanted a home for the first time. And so I will continue those public-private partnerships, working with people in the industry as well as nonprofits to make sure that we have the funding that we need to do. But I'll be a champion around that issue to make sure, because my district had the largest amount of affordable housing, if you look at the percentages as well. So I'm not only a champion, I want quality affordable housing as well.
Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, same question.
Yes, let me say that as it relates to affordable housing, I'm already living in that space. When I realized over 2 years ago that we had over 60,000 people in DeKalb County waiting on affordable housing, I realized the magnitude of the problem. After that time, I started a series, and we have had successfully, to complete the series, a total of 60 different developers as well as individuals and clergy who are interested in helping us to build affordable housing. We currently have 4 projects that we are bringing online that range from 100 units to 300 units. I think that public-private partnerships are going to be very important, because currently, in order to receive low-income housing tax credits that many people refer to as LIHTC, it only requires that a developer set aside 10% of the units. So therefore, we're not making a dent. Also, it's very important that we're more aggressive in setting higher standards, because in 2019, when I joined the Board of Commissioners and we passed the comprehensive plan, we agreed to only create 300 housing units per year. Currently, also, there's a second underlying factor here, is that many developers do not feel they have a good landscape in which to build. Just yesterday, we actually had a forum with our home builders, a regional organization, and they were very candid in the issues that they face. So I believe that we must address issues of zoning as well as also addressing planning and sustainability in DeKalb County, but most importantly, steering the ship through public-private partnerships so that we're vested.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Yeah, so first let me tell you what I've done. So we did a development in my district right across the street from the Kensington MARTA station, 244 units of affordable housing. It's going to be a wonderful facility. Personally, I can't think of a better place for affordable housing than right across from a transit station. But I have to share this with you that the resistance I got from some of my surrounding communities was intense, because the whole notion of affordable housing being anywhere near them was causing them to give me significant pushback. Now, we did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. That development is coming out of the ground. It'll come online within the next year. We've started to make progress toward that front. Secondarily, we had a study that was commissioned by our Community Development Department a few years ago that Dr. Rich did at Emory University. Very good study, very good recommendations. You know how those studies go. There's thick documents and you have to wade through them. But I had the Community Development Department put together for me a decision matrix to look at those recommendations and put them just in a matrix form, recommendation, time frame, doable or not. A great matrix for digesting all of that good information. There are a lot of things contained in that report that are actionable, that we can take action on right away. It's just been collecting dust on a shelf. The collective, we haven't done really anything with it, but as CEO, I will start to execute the recommendations in that report. Last thing I'll say is quality. We've got a lot of housing stock in DeKalb, a lot of old apartments that would be considered affordable, but they're low quality. Who would want to live there? So we've got to start a program of systematically rehabbing these complexes 1, 2, 3 at a time in public-private partnerships without raising the rates so much that the people who live there currently are displaced.
Rebuttal. The 244 units that were referenced are being constructed by MARTA, and they are coming online as we speak. But those units were actually secured as a part of one of the amendments to the current existing MARTA contract, and they are 20 years in the works. Those units actually came online after 2019, when I was the only commissioner to vote against the ratification of the 15th Amendment of the MARTA contract. And we took a deep dive into what was already due DeKalb, because many people that may be watching are very familiar with the fact that we have invested a penny for well over 40 years without there being a direct, shall I say, understanding of where it goes and how it benefits DeKalb. So I do want to set the record straight. Those are developed by MARTA and not by any one commissioner.
Well, that's not quite true. I think my colleague is referencing an entirely different development. The development I'm talking about is a development called Phoenix Station that was done by a developer called LDG. Those are the units that I'm talking about.
In rebuttal, LDG came to the table. They were not recruited by any commissioner.
Nope, I've never made the claim that I recruited them.
I
approved the zoning to do it against serious resistance from my constituents.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys answering that question. Housing, of course, a very important issue. You know, we're housed today for this forum by the wonderful Assembly Studios here in DeKalb County. It's a brand new development, sprawling development, thousands and thousands of studio space that's currently being used as we speak. Of course, projects like this always drive the economy in certain ways, and it allows people in your position to take advantage of that to foster new growth, new development. And so we wanted to ask you about this development in particular because we are here today. So starting with you, Ms. Cochran-Johnson, we want to know, where do you see this development and the film industry in the next 5, 10, 15 years, and how do you, as a CEO, build around it to foster economic growth?
The Assembly is honestly, shall I say, a pivotal point for DeKalb. From an economic development, tourism standpoint, I remember being on these grounds when there was only a trailer and acres of concrete. So I want to commend them. I'm very proud to have the development here. Of course, with the $300 million investment from Universal Studios to turn this into a major tourist destination, of course, I'm very happy because that creates tax revenue that's much needed by DeKalb County, Georgia. Also, as we sit on this location, it is the #1 site that has been presented for a convention center here in DeKalb County, Georgia. I actually paid for a convention center study in 2020 that determined this is the best location. So those conversations continue, and I look forward to seeing this facility utilized in a variety of different ways, a variety of partnerships, and of course leveraging it as a tourist attraction and destination for the people of DeKalb and abroad.
This, where we're sitting, is a catalytic development. The location is wonderful. You got major interstates nearby. You got PDK Airport nearby. It is a wonderful facility. And I'm a big proponent of the movie and film industry. As a matter of fact, a few days ago, I got to visit one of the sister developments here, Electric Owl Studios. A lot smaller footprint, but still doing great and wonderful work. And as CEO of this county, I'm going to be a staunch advocate for driving development in and around these facilities because they're catalytic investments. They employ a lot of people. It's good for the image of the county and the region. And I'm just waiting for the opportunity to star in a major motion picture when I'm CEO.
You and me both. If you know someone, let me know. And Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I would just say, if you can go back to 2013-14, before this was ever developed and talked about, we had a meeting with Edward Perry and the mayor at that time of Doraville. This is when they were trying to demolish the GM plant. They needed funding, and we do the funding by leveraging the tax allocation district. We were the first. I led that in terms of redevelopment board. I was the chair who started the whole process to say, yes, DeKalb wanted to invest and make sure that Doraville has a place in our public-private partnerships. That led to the assembly plant, because we wouldn't have did that tax allocation district way back when. I know we did a second one, but the first one led to them demolishing the property, using all the materials right here to be environmentally sound, and that project started what we see here today. And so as the CEO, I will continue to be a champion around public-private partnerships. I let people know that The Color Purple was filmed here, Jungle Cruise, Jumanji, and all that created jobs for small businesses and sandwiches and set makeup. They go to Kofor Brothers and buy the wood equipment to set up the place. These type of projects help to stimulate the cottage industries and the small industries in our community. And so we can't let it die. We got to continue to grow it. And this is where young people wants to come. We now have tax credits you can get for making videos. I'm from Generation X. I'm from the hip hop generation. And so I understand how music, movies play a part in terms of stimulating and growing our economy and culture. And I want to continue to make sure we have those public-private partnerships. And one of the tools that we'll use is the tax allocation district, and also making sure that we can bring Decide DeKalb in, because that's what we have, the film industry, what I call an advisory board, who looks at films and educates folks in our community. So this is a great opportunity, and you can see what legacy can do.
Certainly. Thank you all for those answers. Rashidah?
All right. So I have the pleasure of asking another reader question. So do you support expanding the animal shelter to accommodate the documented shelter space needs of DeKalb County and its population? And so we're going to start with you, Ms. Cochran-Johnson.
Okay.
I believe we're starting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
I don't want to disrupt the flow.
Apologies.
So
Mr. Bradshaw.
the short answer is yes. I support that. I remember when we opened that animal shelter. I can't claim credit for having anything to do with creating it, but I can tell you it was necessary at the time, because the previous animal shelter, I think the nickname was House of Horribles. It was horrible, but we've outgrown it. Mm-hmm. So a couple things that I've done since I've been in office as chair. When I was chair of the County Operations Committee, I shepherded the legislation to make DeKalb a no-kill shelter at the urging of the DeKalb animal advocates, and that's legislation that's still in place. A couple other things. So in this recent SPLOST that we passed, there's an additional $7.5 million to expand the animal shelter, but that's not going to come online, obviously, anytime soon. So there are some things that I've done in the short run to help alleviate the stress on the animals that are there. In the last 2 budget cycles, I've allocated discretionary funds out of my own budget, out of my office budget, to allocate to Lifeline to defray the cost of animal adoptions for people. So it makes it easier for folks to go in and adopt an animal. Steve Bradshaw is covering those costs. That's making it a little bit easier. So, but I'm a big animal lover. Unfortunately, my wife won't let me have a dog right now because she says I'm not home enough. So maybe someday when I retire, I'll get to have a dog again.
Yes, I would just add, I was the original sponsor of the resolution that created the Animal Advisory Board when we were just dealing with the House of Horrors on Camp Parkway, Camp Drive, over there by the jail. It was a horrible place. We had to do something to make a difference. And that advisory board of residents who came together to look at, from Susan Nugent to Sonali, who's the current chair of that board, on what we can do to protect and build animal welfare in our community. And out of that Animal Advisory Board, the $8 million animal structure came out. Yes, it wasn't enough space. We look back now and say that. But based on the House of Horrors and where it came from, that was like the Taj Mahal. And making sure our animals had a great place to live and feel safe in our community. And so I'm still would be a champion of that. Like Commissioner Bradshaw talked about, I the one voted for the additional space that we need, because remember, humans dealt with the pandemic and people who had animals dealt with the pandemic. When the pandemic was over, a lot of folks brought their animals back to the shelter, which caused a lot of overcrowding. You can't plan for that. You can't understand that, but you got to deal with it. And so as the CEO, I have to deal with that and work with our animal welfare folks, work with citizens in our community to make sure that our animals have a great place to live. But we also got to make sure people who can't afford to have neutering or spading, who want to have a pet, we don't punish them in the interim. And so it's about focusing on building bridges and collaboration, and I've showed that by sponsoring the Animal Advisory Board that led to all of the iterations and progress we made thus far.
Ms. Cochran-Johnson?
Yes. I will say that, first of all, let's start with the financial issue. I was very excited to be a part of the Board of Commissioners as we passed the new SPLOS that includes $7.5 million for the build out of the new shelter. I would say also that those who are animal lovers and who follow the issues that currently exist due to overcrowding, I don't think that we can wait. Meaning, with the SPLOS program, the first year is only collections. So collection of the second round of SPLOS will actually begin in 2025. So if we're to wait 6 years or even 3 years, then I think that's too long. I think immediate action is needed. So as your CEO, I will float a bond against the expected revenue that is already set in SPLOS to begin the build out of a new animal shelter. I will also say that I'm very proud to have co-sponsored alongside Commissioner Michelle Long-Spears a backyard breeding ordinance that is currently in review. And I've also called for a current mandatory audit, external audit, of our existing Lifeline animal shelter out of an abundance of caution from all of the emails and conversations that I've had with others who are concerned. I do think also that it's important, and as your CEO, to provide free animal services. I believe that they will help enhance moving animals progressively into homes, because believe it or not, the cost that's associated with the shelter of a dog is almost in line with what we pay to shelter individuals in DeKalb County Jail.
And I have one additional point, certainly not a rebuttal. I wouldn't frame it as such, just a PSA, if you will. So at my next District 4 Community Development meeting, we're going to actually have Lifeline there to do chipping for animals and to give instruction and guidance and education on the whole spade and neutering process. So they'll be the headliner at my next quarterly and the 4th community breakfast meeting at the end of April.
Excellent. All right. And we appreciate you all answering that question. We didn't want to leave your four-legged constituents out of this forum either. So we're going to take our final break now. When we come back, we're going to have a question from Dan about the growth and the expansion of DeKalb County. So start getting your thought process going in that motion. And we'll also have your closing statements as well. So we'll see you on the other side of this break.
Get the news you need and more on Atlanta News First Plus. Investigations that put you and your family first, plus exclusive in-depth looks that you won't find anywhere else. Watch it now free wherever you stream. Just search Atlanta News First. Get the news you need and more on Atlanta News First Plus. Live weather updates, plus your first alert forecast from the largest team of meteorologists working to keep you safe. Watch it now free wherever you stream. Just search Atlanta News First.
Welcome back, everyone. We're entering the final segment of our forum here. We thank, of course, the candidates for their answers and for their time, frankly. You know, our counties in Georgia are always growing and expanding and changing in a lot of different ways, and that is what your next question is about, so we'll turn it over to Dan for that.
So annexation and new cities in DeKalb County have provided me personally with a lot of job security over the years, so I'm thankful for that. But it is a contentious issue, as you well know. So the question to each of you, if you were CEO, what will be your approach to annexation in new cities in DeKalb County? And we're going to start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Great question. I think one of the ways you have to do is you got to find out where the discontentment is. And you got to be, as a CEO, work with those residents and the commissioner of that area to find out what can we do to make sure that our service levels, that we're delivering and making things happen. The other part I would do is that I would start to establish some district offices out in the community. Well, I'll put all of our department heads can come out there and have resources that can meet people where they are. And that's part of what we have to do. The other part is that you will see a CEO will make sure that we have our resources at key places throughout North, Central, and South, from Plaza La Fiesta, the Perimeter Center, what you call Stonecrest Mall, South DeKalb Mall, bringing the resources to the people so they can interact with our department heads and make things happen. And then you just have to work with the residents and also work with and find out, like I said, what is going on, how can we mitigate the situation before we move to why do you want to annex into a city, and try to find ways that we can connect the dots and try to be proactive. And so I would be a proactive CEO in making sure that we're doing those type of collaborations and partnerships and working along with that commissioner who represents that area to try to provide those services and find out where the problem is and see how we can try to solve it.
Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, same question. What's going to be your approach to annexation in new cities in DeKalb County?
Let me say that, you know, I always like to educate. Annexation is a byproduct of the state, first and foremost. There's a 100% method, 60% method, and of course by right of General Assembly. So you can't control the process, but what we can control is the service. By and large, when I've spoken with constituents, as we've seen the uptick in annexations, many of you may be familiar with Brookhaven recently attempting an annexation, as well as the city of Chamblee. And of course, when you look at the footprint of the county, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But I would argue, as I always have, that the cure to cityhood is good local government. If we get service delivery right, when it comes to our sanitation, when it comes to our water and our infrastructure, then I believe that it is the cure to annexation. So as the CEO, I will work hard to master service delivery within our various departments in DeKalb County, Georgia. I think it is going to be paramount to our future, especially with the increases and the continued erosion of the county itself. Also, I think it's really important as the CEO to work alongside all 12 of our municipalities, because each has an agenda, their own goals, but still we are one DeKalb. So I believe a better working relationship, of which I've already started through holding biannual meetings with our different mayors across our county to better understand where they are and what they desire, and also creating an intergovernmental liaison that will work out of my office and be responsible for attending their meetings and facilitating their growth, as well as securing the interest of the county.
Commissioner Bradshaw, what will your approach be to annexation in new cities in DeKalb?
Thank you. So historically, the relationship between DeKalb County and the cities within DeKalb County has been toxic. It's been horrible. In recent years, that's gotten better, demonstrably better, but there are legacy issues that remain. Now, I can tell you some things I've already done that I will continue as CEO. In my second year in office, 6 years ago, I started having a quarterly meeting with all of the mayors in my district. All the mayors within District 4, and then the one that's got 30% in District 4. That's 5 cities, 5 mayors. And it was simply to make sure the lines of communication between us were open and stayed open. When I was presiding officer of the board, I expanded that to include all 12 mayors. And I can tell you it's something that they really appreciate. It's no frills, no mess, just sitting around. It's mostly on Zoom now, just talking about the issues. And you know what comes out of that, in addition to me sharing things about the county, they get to learn from each other. Because a lot of mayors are in their own silos, running their own municipalities. Well, maybe a mayor in Stonecrest is dealing with an issue that might be of help to the mayor of Brookhaven. I'll circle back to this last thing about keeping the lines of communication open. All right. A few years ago, one of the mayors said to me, me and a few of the mayors have been meeting, and we've decided how we're going to divide up the rest of North DeKalb between us. Now, I was able to say what I'm about to say next because of the lines of communication. I said to him, where does that arrogance come from? That's not yours to divide up. It's not. So we have to get to a place where we can have these conversations in a reasonable, calm manner and decide what the actual future contours of DeKalb County will be. But it will not happen in an environment that I currently call the Wild Wild West, where everybody just kind of grabs what they want, operating in what they think is their own parochial interest without any concern for the rest of DeKalb County.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you all for that. Show of hands. Who's been stuck in traffic in the last week, let's just say?
Yesterday.
Yeah, all right. I don't think we needed to run that experiment to know the answer to that question. So let's talk about I-285. There is a proposed express lane project that would run on that highway, that very important major artery through our county and into our city. And we want to know your thoughts on it. Do you support it? Do you not support it? And if that is the case, then we want to know why. We'll start with you, Ms. Cochran-Johnson.
Now, are you referring to the top end expansion project? Because 285 is a long road. And if you're, depending on where you are, there is a top end project that is currently being considered. And if that's what you're asking, I do support it. Of course, with the top end, there is no secret. It is one of the most congested and high traffic areas in the United States. And what we're seeing across Metro Atlanta is an increase in population, and it's resulting in gridlock on our highways. And currently, independent of the expansion of rail into certain areas, the plan is actually to have to increase it by 2 lanes with some form of barrier between the two, but expanding the highway in both directions. Although there's been no current or formal recommendation, it's my understanding, from MARTA, the Regional Commission, ARC, as well as GDOT are all working in tandem for a solution, and I strongly support that solution. Also in having communication with our top end mayors. I know that they have formed their own commission to help address and also be at the table as the final decisions are made. And primarily it will affect your Dunwoody, your Brookhaven, Sandy Springs is also listed as well as Doraville and Tucker, where we're sitting right now. So I look forward to that solution, just as we are bringing online the interchange on the lower end of 285 where we intersect with Interstate 20. We have to find ways to alleviate the traffic.
Whatever we got to do to get me to work on time. All right, Mr. Bradshaw.
So the short answer to the question is yes, I support it. I support anything that's going to help alleviate traffic and congestion over time. We also need other transportation alternatives. We can look at BRT, we can look at light rail, we can look at heavy rail. The question is always, how much does it cost? And what's the funding source going to be? Now, I asked Marta to do me a simple matrix laying those 3 options side by side. I will tell you that the difference between cost and the difference between time frame from one to the other is massive. So what we have to collectively do is decide which path we want to go down. But I am for anything that's going to alleviate this traffic congestion over time. The metro area is growing. DeKalb County is a big part of that, and we need to manage that growth properly, that all of the elements of infrastructure are in place so that people don't experience what we experience on a regular basis trying to get from one area to another. And just as a side note, so I've been representing my district for the last 7 years. Now that I'm running for CEO, I'm getting a full appreciation of how big DeKalb County is. It is a long drive from Dunwoody to Stonecrest. And depending on the time of day, that is a treacherous stretch. So it's something we have to definitely work on.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I would support it. I think it's needed. I think the bus and those mayors getting together, I think it's very important. That's how you get the funding started. That's how you get MARTA engaged, because they're on one accord. But I also want to make sure that we don't forget the Southern Crescent, South DeKalb, that connects with 675 and 285, and it has the largest employer, which is Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Over 40,000 people work there. You cannot forget on that as an economic driver, and how do we make sure that those folks have an opportunity to have bus rapid transit. Or me as an advocate, I've always advocated for heavy rail in our community. We've had studies done before that said that it could be done, and I will continue to be an advocate for all modes of transportation, heavy, light, and bus, whichever those communities prefer. Those are things that I'm going to push for, because transportation helps with economic development. It helps with your housing. It helps with folks like you that like to shop and get nice clothes, but also helps you to get your kids to school on time. How do we make sure that we connect the dots and understand transportation is more than just a car? It's about a quality of life. It's about making sure that we have the opportunity for economic development. So you have to tie all of those entities together in order to move the ball forward around transportation. So yes, I support it.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for that. We all hate traffic, but we all love green space.
But we be in it.
Yeah.
We live with traffic.
We do.
But, Rashidah has a great question, too, that I think is important, maybe for no one else more so than our families in DeKalb
Right,
County.
yeah. And I'll start with you, Commissioner Bradshaw.
Sure.
So what can be done to improve park maintenance and landscaping?
More money. More money. I mean, green spaces, parks are so critical to quality of life. So when I came into office 7 years ago, I inherited about $2.5 million in park bond funds. And I remember thinking to myself, really? How come my predecessor didn't spend that money? Why is it still here for me? After getting past that, I decided, okay, I'm going to deploy those dollars where they need to be deployed. And I've started enhancing parks around my district. Hairston Park in my district, adjacent to the Senior and Community Center that I referenced earlier, is one example of that. It's a great gathering space now with the enhancements that have occurred in that space since I've been there. But I'm a big proponent of parks and green space, and we just need to make sure the parks budget is what it needs to be, and we don't scrimp on that when inevitably things start to get tight again.
And I would say that bond initiative that Commissioner Bradshaw is speaking of, it was like a $125 million bond initiative. I had just got in office, but at least 70% of them had to be used to buy land. Only 30% could be used to fix things that need to be fixed. So it did go back to a funding issue. But what we were able to do was buy land, but also create one of the largest trails, named after Michelle Obama. It goes from Moreland Avenue right now to Waldriff Road, and we just got funding to go from Waldriff to 155. So now you'll be able to go from Moreland Avenue all the way to Stonecrest. Bike it, ride it, walk it, and guess what? It's now going to connect to the East Side Beltline. So you go down to Pond City Market all the way to Stonecrest. Green space. I get to walk it because I'm a walker. I made walking official exercise for DeKalb County, one of the only municipalities to do that. We were named by Michelle Obama as one of the counties that people look to in terms of green space and progression. But I will continue to make sure that we can have the funding. If you go over to Gresham Park right now, it was an underserved park, but it produces some of the best baseball players in the state of Georgia. If you want to play baseball, you got to go through Gresham Park. And we put artificial turf down there. Named the field after Hank Aaron, artificial turf. Guess what? We got folks coming from Johns Creek, Alpharetta, to play right there off of Boulder Crest Road in our community. Don't tell me what upgrades and things can do for your community. I mean, it looks like you could play Major League Baseball out there. But that's what we can do. As a CEO, I will make sure that we continue, because green space equals wellness. You can't afford a LA Fitness membership, but you can go into your parks and walk around and connect with your kids for free.
And I will say that, being from Alabama and raised with an abundance of trees, I never thought I'd see the day that we needed to secure our land in the way that we do now. So one of the things that I would say would be top of my list as a priority as CEO is the creation of a land trust. Currently, DeKalb County does not have a functional land trust, so that we are able to take valuable parcels of land and set them aside for future generations. I believe also, for me, let me say, I didn't walk in and have any park bond funds. There was absolutely nothing in my park bond funds when I came in. Also, the issue is money, but I think that as leaders, we have to be creative in ways to generate revenue. So I'm very proud to be the founder of Embark Youth Farm, which is a 58-acre oasis. We have completed phase 1 development. We've installed a state-of-the-art greenhouse, 32 raised garden beds. We have everything from pickleball to transitional stations, and we are teaching children nature. Phase 2 of the project will begin this spring with growers bringing in produce. The goal is to create a self-sustaining environment, and I'm also proud to be the commissioner who funded the first park naturalist in South DeKalb. So I'm very excited to create innovative ways to generate revenue for the expansion of our parks and recreation, and also with the budget being a moral document, it literally speaks to what our priorities are. So as your CEO, I will prioritize our parks.
I want to make one addendum. It's not a rebuttal by any means, but I want to just share this. So my approach to allocating the park bonds funds was this: I wouldn't allocate any funds to any park unless it had a friends group attached to it. Now, why is that important? It's important because the last thing you want to do is make an investment in a park and the community says, that's nice, and 6 months later it's trashed again because the community never embraced it. So going back to the example I used earlier, the communities around Hairston Park, your main streets and your hidden hills and your fountainheads, they formed a friends group that is a model. And that is one of the things I'm going to insist upon going forward, that these parks have people that put their loving arms around them, not just me as CEO writing checks.
Yeah. Now, before we do closing statements, does anyone else have any thoughts on parks, green space before we move on? I want to give everyone a chance here. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you guys all being here today.
Do golf courses count?
The good ones are green.
DeKalb County has a couple of golf courses, so
they're green.
Which we put a lot of money into over time too. Mm-hmm. So
let me add to that, since he talked about, I'm not a golfer, but
I am.
It's right. I'm glad. I want him to be the golfer. But what I've done with Sugar Creek Golf and tennis, it's only clay court within our 285, besides the Browns Mill Park in Atlanta's. Coco played over there tennis. But we renovated that golf course to make sure that it could be used, like you said, green space. But I allocated about $500,000 to get to the new fab, which is pickleball. And so we added pickleball over there, and it's not going to cause tension because the tennis players wanted it. So it's going to be a great addition to tennis and pickleball right in our Sugar Creek golf course, and I was glad to be a person who invested in that type of sport.
I was waiting for somebody to bring up the P word. Yes.
Yeah.
It is very popular.
And I will, let me add, since, it seems a little bit free flow of a conversation, that I'm actually the commissioner who forwarded the documentation for the creation of a trails master plan, because trails are very important too as it relates to mobility and transportation. And over the past several years, we've not had dedicated funds. When I came in as a commissioner in 2019, it appears that, you know, the majority of the funding went towards the golf courses. So when I decided to create an Embark Youth Farm, it was a little bit of a deviation and sort of a new thing, but very excited to have a dedicated funding source set aside so that we can treat trails the same way that we do our roads, and resurfacing and say, hey, we're able to create 25 or 30 miles of trails on an annual basis.
Excellent. Good discussion on that topic, and it'll be our last one today, unfortunately. If you can believe it, we're kind of to the end of our time here together. But again, before we allow everyone to say their final piece, we just want to thank you again for doing this. This is important.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our pleasure, and it's really not for us. It's for the constituents. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to give everybody 2 minutes for their final statements. Since, Mr. Johnson, you went last, we're going to allow you to go first, and we'll go down the line before we wrap things up here. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Atlanta News First, Decaturish, and League of Women Voters. This has been a great opportunity for us to highlight the talents, abilities, and gifts of all of us. But I'm Larry Johnson. My website is lj4ceo.com, lj4ceo.com. It's about better, safer, stronger, united DeKalb. We're going to work to make sure public safety is continue to be funded and moving forward. Prevention, part of my heart, is public health. We're going to make sure we focus on violence prevention and making sure that that becomes a level one in terms of status for a cabinet when I'm the CEO, because we have to deal with it intergenerationally. And you're also going to get a leader who understands how to connect the dots around our pandemics and how to make sure we move forward to make sure mental health is not locking somebody up at our jails, but find a place for them in our society for treatment and making sure that the least of these are getting connected. So I'm here to be your CEO for the 22nd century, to bring all of our generations together, to focus on infrastructure improvements. As you see around sidewalks, our roads need to be paved, potholes need to be eliminated. And so vote for Larry starting April 29th through May 17th or May 21st, the day before my birthday, May 22nd.
There you go. Thank you. You saved me some time on the back end, having to remind people when that is. But final thoughts for you. 2 minutes, Mr. Bradshaw.
Yeah, thank the three of you for doing this. You've done a marvelous job questioning us today and affording us this opportunity. I thank my two colleagues for gracing me with their presence here today. I've served with both of them, and I have nothing but the highest regard for both of them. My name is Steve Bradshaw. Serving as the County Commissioner of District 4 for the last 7 years has been one of the highlights of my professional life. I can tell you, aside from serving this country as a young Army officer 30-something years ago, it's really been a great privilege. The citizens of my district have vested me with their trust, and it's not anything that I take for granted. And as the next CEO of DeKalb County, I promise you that I won't take it for granted. I will work very hard. My agenda I can distill for you. I'm going to wake up every day working hard to make DeKalb County safer, cleaner, business friendlier, and more inclusive. Safer, cleaner, business friendlier, more inclusive. I won't be a showboater. I won't be a grandstander. I'm just going to come in every day and go to work. I wake up early. I stay late. That's what you're going to get out of me. In terms of what I think I bring to the table, temperament, judgment, and humility. That's a leadership quality. It's a lot of times overlooked. We ascend to these roles and think we're all of that and everything else. But I think humility is a very important leadership quality, because I don't strive for the office of CEO because I think I'm imbued with all the answers myself. I've lived long enough to know better than that. So I will surround myself with people smarter than me, stronger than me, better looking than me, who are going to help me govern this county, both in the private sector, in the public sector, citizens. You're all going to have a seat at the table in a Steve Bradshaw administration. And so my ask is that you believe in Steve, because I believe in you. And I thank you so much.
And thank you, sir. And Ms. Cochran-Johnson.
Yes, thank you all, Decaturish, ANF, League of Women Voters, for having us. It's always great to have conversation. I think it's very important to talk and better understand, because our votes are a fiduciary responsibility. In my opinion, sitting here today, DeKalb is truly at a crossroad. The next leader of DeKalb must have the ability to grow DeKalb. They must have a clear understanding of where we need to go, where we are, and also the capacity to move us progressively forward. Here in DeKalb County, as I look at us, we have tremendous potential, and the leadership that we choose has to understand how to materialize that potential. Everything from education is important here to infrastructure, as well as creating a business-friendly environment. When you currently look at DeKalb, there is a stark difference between the northern end and our municipalities and what we see on the south side. As your commissioner, I have been dedicated. I have been on the forefront of business development in our county, and I look forward to bringing forward developments that are in line with who we are, that redefine and reimagine our communities. I believe that government should be effective and efficient. I believe that it is time we take a critical look at how we operate. I have heard our constituents loud and clear as they have expressed to me what they desire for the future of DeKalb. When I came in 2018, I was Lorraine for Change, and nothing has changed. I remain that individual who has the capacity, the care, and the conviction to lead us forward. I look forward to the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing DeKalb County and government completely reimagined under my leadership.
Well, thank you all again for your time and for your candid answers today. We wish you the best of luck on the campaign trails. I also want to thank one more time Rashidah and Dan for being fantastic co-moderators on this very, very important forum that we have held here today. So thank you also for tuning in. Maria?
Thank you so much for tuning in to ANF Plus. Thank you to our candidates and moderators, our media partners at Decaturish, and the League of Women Voters of DeKalb County. We also want to thank Assembly Atlanta for hosting today's forum, and thank you, the citizens of DeKalb County. We'll be following this race closely and bring you the latest at DecaturishVotes.com and in the free Atlanta News First app. You can catch more content from Atlanta News First and Decaturish across all our streaming platforms and right here every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Good night.